Welcome to the mid-year ASEP update. Our topic today is reporting data. We will not answer any questions during the presentation today, so please ask any questions you have using the questions feature on the webinar toolbar. Questions submitted during the presentation will be used to create a frequently asked questions document that will be posted along with the recording of this presentation. The FAQ document and recording will be available on the Program Provider Resources page on the TEA website. This webinar is being presented by the TEA Division of Educator Data and Preparation Program Management. Your presenter today is Lori Ayers. TEA staff also available to support you are Vanessa Alba, Emily Newton, Angela Von Hatten, and directors Mark Olafson and Jessica McLaughlin. Please note that hereafter in this webinar, when I refer to you, I'm referring to your Educator Preparation Program, or EPP, since you are here as a representative of your EPP. We have a short agenda today. We will begin by reviewing some requirements and expectations around reporting the data generated by your EPP. We will also provide some reminders about data you should be collecting and will be required to report at the end of this academic year. TEA has also prepared mid-year data sets for you, which we will touch on a bit later in the webinar, followed by some helpful hints and reminders that will make your required state reporting easier. Please remember to post any questions that you have in the question feature of the webinar toolbar. I will use some acronyms today that will be important for you to know as you are following along with the presentation. First, ECOS, or ECOS, refers to the Educator Certification Online System that houses educator and EPP data for the state. You are most familiar with the ECOS for Entities, which is the green screen your EPP uses to create admission records for candidates, to grant test approval, to report candidate enrollment, and to recommend certificates. Second, ASEP, or ASEP, refers to the Accountability System for Educator Preparation. It is also a menu option within the ECOS for Entities green screen. EPP admission data, enrollment data, and observation data are entered and managed through links on the ASEP menu. When I use the terms ASEP reporting or state reporting, I will be referring to the required data that each EPP must report each year by September 15th and the related activity around entering and submitting that data. Next, the WPRO or Waiver Pro certificates are the one-year probationary certificates issued to EPP finishers allowed under the governor's waiver. These certificates allowed for candidates to be certified without passing one or more of the required tests and did not require field supervision from EPPs. Finally, the WINT or WINT certificates are the intern certificates issued to EPP candidates who are completing internships allowed under the governor's waiver. These certificates allowed for candidates to complete internships without passing the required tests, and they required field supervision from the supervising EPP. As you are working on data collection and continuing with your plan for a smooth data submission in September, you have some helpful resources available to you. On the Program Provider Resources page on the TEA website, you will find the 2020, 2021 Educator Preparation Program Data Reporting Manual. It's posted toward the bottom of the page in the Forms and Documents section. Additionally, as I stated earlier, a recording of this webinar and the related FAQ document containing answers to your questions will be posted in the EPP Training Events and Materials section. You will be receiving mid-year data sets, which we will go over in more detail in a bit. Also, the help desk is a resource for you. It is easily accessed via the link at the top of the TEA homepage at tea.texas.gov. When you click on the help desk icon, you will be transported to a page full of colorful tiles. Look for the ocean blue tile that says Educator Testing and Preparation Programs. If you click on that tile, you will be given 3 options to route your question to the best department for a response. Choose the option that says Data Reporting. Then just fill out the request form and attach any necessary related documents and submit. The help desk is secure, so you can submit your questions and/or data files to TEA with confidence. Let's take a step back now and review the reason for state reporting and therefore the need for this webinar. 19 Texas Administrative Code, or TAC, requires EPPs to report specific types of data each year by September 15th, following the end of that academic year. For your reference, that citation is 19 TAC 229.3E. 19 TAC 229.3 F1 and the related figure provide more detail about the data that TEA is required to collect and that EPPs are required to report. The data submitted by EPPs each year is used for a variety of purposes, such as the consumer information that TEA is required to publish, and EPP accountability calculations that result in the determination of the annual EPP accreditation rating. Data is also provided by TEA to a variety of requesters through public information requests, as well as to other entities and individuals that request and use the data for a variety of reasons. As such, the expectation is that the data and EPP reports must be an accurate representation of the EPP activities. To reinforce the expectation of accuracy, the EPP legal authority signs an attestation of accuracy, verifying the data submitted by the EPP each year. This timeline represents the academic year, which is also the reporting year. With respect to state reporting, you can see that we are halfway through that year. The yellow circle at center is our current point in the year. So we have before us as much time as we have behind us for data collection and organizing ourselves for reporting. TEA has been busy generating data sets, working with IT on some updates to ECOS to facilitate reporting, and putting together the resources we reviewed earlier. If your EPP has not been equally busy preparing for your part of the data reporting process, now is the time to get busy. The data submitted each year by your EPP is important, and there are a lot of different data pieces that you must pull together, ensure are accurate, and submit to TEA. As such, we know data reporting crunch time in late August and early September can be stressful. So we encourage you to plan at the beginning of the year and implement a process for data collection. In other words, begin with the end in mind. In the ASEP reporting retrospective webinar that we held last fall, we debriefed with you on the 2019-2020 reporting year, and at that time provided some reminders to set you on a positive path forward toward the 2020-2021 reporting year. You will recall that we encouraged you to set some goals and put a plan in place to collect and input data throughout the year, instead of waiting until the final 2 weeks of the year. That is still sound advice, and if you have not done that, it is not too late to start. We are midway through the year. At the very minimum at this point, you should have most, if not all, of the data for your fall 2020 candidates already in ECOS. If those candidates have been standard certified, you should have all of their data updated in ECOS, including observations and finisher status. Unless you are new to the educator preparation process, you likely know what is required in the way of data and how it is reported. But let's review anyway so that you can move forward with confidence for the remainder of the reporting year. The data collection and reporting process begins with admission. Effective September 1, 2019, candidate admissions are reported to TEA within 7 calendar days of the formal admission date by creating an admission record for them in ECOS. The admission record is designed to capture the data that TEA is required to collect. The admission record may be created in one of 2 ways in the ASEP drop-down menu in your ECOS for Entities green screen. First, by putting all of the required admission data for multiple candidates into a CSV formatted spreadsheet and uploading via the Upload Admissions link. Or, second, by using the admission search link to manually create an admission record for an individual candidate. Existing admission records may be edited using either admission search or maintain admissions. The admission record has a very helpful feature in that it automatically creates 2 more records for the admitted candidate. First, a test approval record is created for each test that will be required for that candidate's certificate, and the status is populated as eligible so that the candidate cannot actually test until you are ready to approve the testing. Second, an enrollment record is created on the finisher records list, and the status is populated as other enrolled. For your convenience, that other enrolled status will roll over each year the candidate is enrolled until you change the status to finisher or until the candidate leaves and you remove the candidate from the enrollment record. Whether you use the bulk upload feature or create the admission record manually, you will need to have some specific candidate data handy to create the record. You will find the list under the Upload Admissions tab. To create the admission record, you will need candidate identifiers, including the candidate's TEA ID number, first and last name, date of birth, email address, and admission date. You will also be asked to identify the candidate's test approval route, which would either be university-based undergraduate postbac or alternative with prep, or simply alternative with prep if your organization is not a university. You will also need to have the CERT license ID for each certificate sought by the candidate, such as Math 4 through 8 with Special Education Supplemental, and the related roll code, which would in this example be 029 for a teacher certificate. If you create the admission record manually, the test approval route, roll code, and CERT license ID are selected from drop-down lists for your convenience. At the time you create the admission record, you will also report some required admission data for that candidate, which will include the overall GPA, the admission GPA, the number of subject-specific content hours on the candidate's transcript, and the GPA of those hours if the candidate is pursuing a teaching certificate. And finally, you would provide the SAT, ACT, or GRE scores for the candidate if those scores are required for admission into your university. Note the subject-specific content hours, the content hour GPA, and the SAT, ACT, GRE scores are identified as optional reporting. This is so because they may not be applicable to all candidates. For example, the subject-specific content hours and the related GPA are required to be reported for teacher candidates, but are not required for candidates pursuing non-teacher certificates such as principal or educational diagnostician. The items on the list on this slide that are marked with an asterisk are those that cannot be edited once you have saved the record. Other fields may be updated by the EPP as needed to accurately and completely report candidate information. If editing one of the non-editable fields becomes necessary, please contact your TEA program specialist for assistance. TEA strongly encourages EPPs to require candidates to set up their own TEAL accounts and then provide the EPP with the TEA ID number to use when creating the admission record. This prevents some potentially problematic issues, such as multiple TEAL accounts created for one candidate, that will likely down the road interfere with that candidate's testing and certification. Note that this pro tip relates to my previous comment about having candidates create their own TEAL accounts. We strongly encourage you to adopt this practice. Numerous issues can develop when EPPs assist candidates by creating the TEAL account when the admission record is created. Some of our EPPs require the applicant to provide the TEA ID number in the admission application. An electronic application can be set to allow submission only after required fields are completed. When you use the TEA ID number to create the admission record, you will have added assurance that the record is correct because you will get an error message if the TEA ID number does not match the name of the person you are trying to enter. This helps to avoid issues such as duplicate accounts that I mentioned earlier cause problems for the candidates later on. Some things to remember about admission records that will facilitate your reporting process are that admission records cannot and should not be deleted unless they are truly created in error. Currently, EPPs can edit admission records manually, one record at a time. TEA is working on an enhancement that will allow EPPs to upload edits for multiple candidates, similar to the way enrollment status and test approvals can be updated using a CSV file via the related upload links in the ASEP menu. TEA will provide more information on that enhancement when the work is complete. And finally, remember that admission records for 2020, 2021 may not be created after August 31st, 2021, except for those candidates with admission dates that are in the last week of August. Let's move on from admission records and talk a minute about enrollment records. Every candidate in every certification class in your EPP must have an enrollment record on the finisher records list for 2020, 2021, and should have records for any past years of enrollment. Recall that the finisher records list is actually only one list that can be sorted to show candidates with a status of either enrolled or finisher or both. As a result of enhancements to ECOS last year, EPPs can now also sort their list to review those candidates that were removed during the year. As stated earlier, the initial enrollment record is now created by the admission record. Thereafter, though, EPP staff will need to update the enrollment record as needed. For example, you would update the enrollment status of a candidate from other enrolled to finisher, or from other enrolled to removed as applicable. Additionally, if the candidate submits a written request to change the certificate sought or to add an additional certificate area, and you approve that change or addition, you would need to update the enrollment record for that candidate to reflect the new certificate area. EPPs have until ASEP locks on September 15th to update enrollment status for the reporting year. However, your target should be to have everyone accurately represented on the finisher records list by the end of the year, which is August 31st, 2021. As mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, a good process to adopt at your EPP is to have all data updated for candidates before you recommend their standard certificates. You can update the enrollment status of your candidates manually using either the Maintain Finishers link or the Student Search link in the ASEP menu, or due to enhancements that were implemented last year, you may update the status of multiple candidates with a CSV file via the Upload Finishers link, also in the ASEP drop-down menu. To reinforce some key reminders for enrollment records, remember that the records for each candidate must reflect the enrollment status and all certificates sought by the candidate and must be accurate as of the end of the reporting year. Additionally, remember that ASEP locks after the reporting year closes, so data entered through any of the options in the ASEP menu cannot be updated after the close of the reporting year. Remember that what happens in 2020-2021 is reported in 2020-2021. Also, as many of you have discovered, observation data for candidates cannot be uploaded unless the candidate is listed on the finisher records list for that reporting year, which means making sure all of the key pieces are in place around admissions and enrollment will facilitate other data reporting as well. Again, in the spirit of report as you go throughout the year, we strongly encourage you to adopt a process that includes finalizing a candidate's data in ASEP before you recommend the standard certificate for that candidate. We've reviewed admission data and enrollment data and some reminders for reporting each in ECOS. Observation data will also need to be reported for each candidate completing clinical teaching, an internship, or a practicum. Note that effective starting in the 1920 reporting year, observations are reported for non-teacher candidates as well as for teacher candidates. The EPP reports all formal observations conducted by the field supervisor for each candidate, including any formal observations that are in addition to the minimum number of observations that are required in TAC. Observations must meet the minimum for duration and frequency as required for the certificate class of the candidate and the type of assignment. For example, there is a different observation frequency required for a teacher candidate completing clinical teaching than the frequency that is required for a teacher candidate completing an internship while holding an intern certificate. Additionally, the duration required for each teacher candidate observation is a minimum of 45 minutes. But for non-teacher candidates completing a practicum, there is no duration requirement for any one observation. Instead, there is a total duration of 135 minutes required across 3 observations. Also, remember that you will not report observations for your finishers who were issued Waiver Pro certificates. Similar to the other records reported in ASEP, the observations may be reported either manually for an individual using the observations link, or for multiple candidates by populating their data on a CSV file and uploading via the Upload Observations link. When you are reporting observation data for your candidates, you will need to have some specific information on hand. You will need to have the first and last name and TEA ID number for both the candidate and the field supervisor that conducted the observation. Names must be spelled accurately as they are listed in ECOS and in your field supervisor database. You will also need to report the assignment start and end dates, as well as the actual date of the observation. The assignment type, the duration of the observation, and any comments about the observation will also be included in the record. Speaking of the field supervisor database, remember that your field supervisor must be listed there, or the EPP will not be able to report observations conducted by that field supervisor. TEA has a few hints that you might find helpful as you're working on reporting your observation data. First, candidates must be listed on the finisher records list for 2020, 2021 with an enrollment status of other enrolled or finisher. Second, report all formal observations that occur in the 2020, 2021 reporting year via the ASEP drop-down menu in your ECOS for Entities green screen. Note that the start and end date of the assignment and the effective dates on the certificate may be outside the reporting year, but the observation date must be within the reporting year. Additionally, the observation date must be within the effective dates on the certificate and must be within the assignment start and end dates. Last year, there were problems with creating observation records for observations conducted in the summer after July 1st of 2020. This was mostly happening with superintendent candidates because some of their educator standards allow for some of their practicum hours to be completed in summer months. This issue was due to a data validation step in ASEP that identified anything after July 1st, 2020 as occurring in the next reporting year, which would of course not be unlocked yet. TEA is currently addressing this validation through some system enhancements, so we're hopeful that this will not be an issue in September. Thinking further about non-teacher programs, the third bullet reminds us to please use the NONTCH code for all non-teacher observations, including those conducted for candidates who completed their practicum while holding an intern or probationary certificate. Finally, the best advice from TEA is for EPPs to upload observations as they occur throughout the year instead of waiting until the last few days of state reporting. That way, all observation data is entered and EPPs have time to troubleshoot any issues that may come up. We've reviewed the requirements and expectations for data reporting, and we have also looked at some data that is required to be reported and how to report it. Let's circle back around now to one of the resources I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, which is the dataset resource. For the last 2 years, TEA has provided EPPs with mid-year data sets that reflected a variety of data that had been reported by the EPP during the first half of the reporting year. EPPs overall found these data sets to be helpful and provided TEA positive feedback to that effect. TEA has heard you and will be providing those data sets to EPPs again this year. Sometime today, your EPP legal authority will receive 3 data sets that represent data generated and/or reported by your EPP from September 1st, 2020 through mid-March. The first 2 data sets will include observations your EPP has reported for all candidates during 2020, 2021 through March 15th, and the current test pass rates for tests taken by your candidates through March 22nd. The third data set may be used for cleanup also. This data set will show the EPP the candidates that are currently enrolled with the status of other enrolled on the finisher records list, as well as those who have rolled over as other enrolled for multiple years. If you have candidates who are enrolled with the status of other enrolled and who are no longer with the EPP, you will need to change their enrollment status to removed before the close of state reporting on September 15th, or by the better target date of August 31st, 2021. When you receive the observation data sets, the best way to use them is to review the observations you have recorded so far to ensure all of them have been recorded. Meeting the performance standard for completion of observations depends on the EPP reporting all observations completed. So remember, leave no observation behind. The data set that depicts your current pass rates is for your information and reflection only. Obviously, keeping an eye on your pass rates for all tests will help you stay on top of curriculum updates and/or modifications to your test readiness requirements that may be needed for specific certificate areas. As mentioned on the previous slide, one key use of dataset 3 is to help you with cleanup of your finisher records list. As you are aware, candidates with a status of other enrolled at the end of one reporting year will roll over to the new reporting year automatically. While this is a very helpful feature for record keeping, it does pose a problem when a candidate leaves the EPP unnoticed. That candidate will continue to roll over to a new list every year, even though he or she is no longer enrolled. Please take some time to clean up your finisher records list by verifying enrollment status and the certificate sought for current candidates, and remove or correct enrollment records as needed. Keep in mind that once you have all data entered accurately and your finisher records list accurately reflects the enrollment status and certificate area of each candidate, your EPP legal authority will be able to sign the data verification attestation with confidence. We are coming to the end of this mid-year data update. I would like to leave you with some additional helpful hints to facilitate a smooth reporting process for your EPP. Your TEA directors and program specialists see and hear about many of the successes and problems around state reporting each year. From that history, we have come up with some hints that we feel will help to keep the stress around state reporting at a manageable level. First, update data throughout the year. ECOS has experienced slowdowns during heavy traffic in August through September. I think everyone on this webinar understands this, yet each year we get calls about slowdowns in ECOS around state reporting time. Second, request TEA assists and data fixes early if needed. TEA staff can provide better support with more time. So bring those issues to us early to get them cleared up quickly. Solving your issues may also help TEA efficiently resolve the same issues for others. We're all in this together. Third, If you are using the bulk upload processes to input your data, it will help tremendously if you will build in a process step to open the CSV file with Notepad before you attempt the upload. We all know that one stray mark can cause a problem in a CSV file. And stray marks, spacing issues, and missing data are easily identified in the Notepad format. Fourth, adopt the practice of ensuring all candidate data is updated in ECOS before recommending the standard certificate for that candidate. Next, watch the EPP newsletter for updates and information about ECOS. If you have not subscribed to the EPP newsletter and need assistance doing so, please contact your assigned program specialist. The newsletter is a fantastic resource for EPPs. Additionally, past newsletters are posted on the Program Provider Resources page on the TEA website. And finally, report system issues to TEA staff ASAP. We appreciate that input. The sooner we know about a system issue, the quicker we can either help you to correct it or submit a request to IT if necessary to resolve a larger issue. We rely on our users to let us know when the system is not working as it is supposed to. TEA has received questions about accountability for the 2020-2021 reporting year, likely due to the COVID disruption that appears to be ongoing. As you recall, for 2019-2020, the State Board for Educator Certification, or ASEP, approved the status of not rated declared state of disaster, and data reporting was required, but it was designated a report-only year. The ASEP has not yet determined the status of ASEP accountability for the 2020-2021 reporting year. Please note, and this is important to remember, all data that is required to be reported each year must be reported and is expected to be accurate even if the year is report only and even if the data is not used to determine EPP accreditation status. Remember, it was noted at the beginning of this presentation that the data you submit is used for a variety of purposes, so it must be complete and accurate to serve those purposes. Before we leave you today, I have a couple of other reminders for you. First, ECOS will be down for maintenance starting on Friday, March 26th, and continuing through sometime on Sunday, March 28th. Essentially, EPPs should expect that they won't be able to access ECOS during that weekend. EPPs are encouraged to plan so that imminent work involving ECOS or ASEP is completed by Thursday in anticipation of the outage on Friday. Also, keep in mind, this means that if you need assistance from TEA staff that requires us to look up relevant information in ECOS, we will not be able to assist you in that way on that Friday. The second reminder is about another webinar that's coming up. Our colleagues at Westat and Pearson are teaming up to provide EPP staff a training webinar focused on Title II reporting. That webinar is planned for April 1st, 2021 at 10 a.m. The Title II reporting webinar will be useful for any EPP staff that are involved with Title II reporting. You will find the link to register for the webinar in the TEA newsletter. We have come to the end of our time together this morning. As always, I've enjoyed being your presenter today and conveying information and reminders to you that I hope you found helpful. Please know that TEA appreciates you and your commitment to preparing high-quality educators for Texas. We also appreciate you for taking the time to attend this webinar because we know you are busy. Please make sure you've recorded your questions so that we can respond to them in an FAQ, and then give us a few days to post the FAQ document with the recording on the Program Provider Resources page on the TEA website. As always, don't hesitate to reach out to your assigned program specialist if you need guidance, clarification, or other assistance from TEA staff. Have a wonderful day.